Now I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized as if in morning business for such time as I shall assume.
Without objection.
Mr. President, first of all, let me kind of address what happened today, because I think it's significant. I know a lot of people are a little bit confused over what did happen, and it was somewhat of a surprise. We have, I think, as the President knows, I have been kind of leading the opposition of this whole idea of cap and trade that originated, it was way back in 2001. And since that time, we've voted on it many, many times. And I always will remember back in those days, Mr. President, that most people believed that man-made gases were contributed to global warming, and that the world was going to come to an end, and it's because of man-made gases and CO2 emissions. And at that time, real early on, I was on the Environment and Public Works Committee. I think at that time I was not chairman, but I was the chairman of one of the subcommittees. And I thought it must be true. Everybody says it. Well, some time went by, and we got a report. The first one came from the Wharton School, where they talked about the fact that if we were to pass cap and trade, at that time there were two bills that were up before the United States Senate. It was not in the House, it was just in the Senate. And those bills would have been cap and trade types of bills. So they calculated what would this cost if we in the United States passed cap and trade. Now this is way back in 2002, 2003. And they said the range of the cost to the American people would be between $300 billion and $400 billion a year. Now, I do something, I don't think very many people do this, but I always do it. Every time I hear a large number, I go back and get the latest figures from my state of Oklahoma as to how many families file a federal tax return. Then I do the math to determine how much it's going to cost my average family who pays taxes. And it came back in excess of $3,000 a year. And I thought, that is a lot of money. Let's be sure that there is science behind this idea, knowing that it all came from the United Nations. That's what started this whole thing. By the way, this IPCC is an Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's what, and that's the United Nations. So that's where it all started. And if you might remember, that was when, during the Clinton-Gore administration, when Al Gore went down to South America and he came back with this idea. They had the Kyoto Treaty, and we're all going to sign it. And if we don't do this, the world will come to an end. We'll all die because of man-made gases. Well, we started looking at it to see if the science really was there, because the only science we had heard from was the United Nations science, which is IPCC. Well, sure enough, we started getting phone calls from scientists all over the country. Put that chart up there on the scientists. And so I came down to the floor. This is a long time ago, and I'd start naming the scientists who were calling in groups of scientists. We got up to 100, then up to 1,000, then to 4,000. This is all in my website, and even though it's a long time ago. And you look at all these renowned scientists, all of them. Here's one right here. Richard Lindzen is with MIT. Richard Lindzen is one who is considered by a lot of people to be the foremost authority on this, and he's the one who came out adamantly and said, no, the science is not there, it is not settled, and so several others started calling in. In fact, I will quote him, if I have it here, what Richard Lindzen actually said at that time. He said that, controlling carbon is a bureaucrat's dream. He said, if you control carbon, you control life. This is what bureaucrats would like to do. You understand that. I'd say to the chair, because he has served in the other house, is new here in the Senate. Lindzen also said, talking about Al Gore at that time was Vice President of the United States. He was the one that was really pushing this. He says, to treat all change as something to fear is bad enough. To do so in order to exploit that fear is much worse. And of course, what he was talking about, Richard Lindzen, MIT, was the fact that Al Gore at that time, they had speculated that he would be the first environmental billionaire. That was speculated in the New York Times. So anyway, after that happened, all the other scientists started checking in. These are scientists that cannot be challenged, these individuals. We have hundreds more, but I have a make on each one of these that I'd be glad to discuss or debate with anyone. But at the same time, other things were happening. One of the universities here in Virginia commissioned a poll to be done of all of the weathercasters on TV. They came back that 63% of the weathercasters said that any global warming that occurs is a result of natural variation and not human activities. So when I hear people, and I know I have good friends on the other side that really believe this, and I think that sometimes you have to open it up and realize there is another side to this story. So when they say that 98% of the scientists agree, it just isn't true. And we have the names and the things that have actually been said. I think one thing that people are going to have to remember. Well, let me first of all say what happened today, because I know that they've been told that I would explain what happened today. My good friend Senator Whitehouse had an amendment. The amendment was one sentence. It says that climate change is real, and it is not a hoax. And it is not a hoax. Well, there's a rule against talking about your own books on the Senate floor, so I can't do that. But that hoax came from a totally different interpretation. Hoax was the idea that this is happening, climate change, but it's due to man-made gases. In other words, man is causing that. And so what I said on the Senate floor today, I said, how arrogant is it for people to say that man can do something about changing climate? Climate has always changed. And I quoted this morning. I said it's changed. You go back and read look at the archaeological findings. They talk about climate from the beginning of time has changed and changed both ways. They talk about, and the scriptures talk about it. And so this is something that everyone has agreed, and no one would debate that it has always happened. The debate is whether man is causing that to happen. So here we have a chart that shows the do you remember the hockey stick? The hockey stick was the concept that one of the guys with the IPCC came out, and he said that it's like a hockey stick. We had this weather going like this for a long period of time, then all of a sudden it shot up and it resembled a hockey stick. But what they forgot was to put these two things in the hockey stick, but it's supposed to be level. One is the medieval warming period that was between about 1000 and 1500 AD. We're talking about recently. And then that went into the Little Ice Age. Well, those were kind of left off the chart. So we have looked back. Everything you look at talks about how many years in the past we have had this change that's taken place in climate. Now I'll go, and I'm going to do this from memory, but there are, in addition to these major changes like you're seeing on this chart, which is a chart that this actually is the IPCC's chart, so no one's going to argue with that because they're the ones that dreamed up this whole idea. That's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But within that, I can remember when I first heard the terms global warming or an ice age, it was when they went back and they started tracing not long-term trends in climate change, in weather, but short-term, starting in 1895. From 1895 to 1918, they had what they referred to as a cooling spell, possibly another little ice age. Then in 1918, it started getting warm again, and so from 1918 to 1945 was a little warming period, and so that took place every 30 years. Then in 1995, from that period until 1975, for 30 years, it again went into a cooling period. Here, Mr. President, is the key. No one will argue with the fact that 1945 was the year that we had the maximum increased surge in CO2 emissions. And that precipitated not a warming period, but a cooling period. Then, of course, 75 came along. Where are those charts that showed in 1974? Time Magazine or one of those? Yeah, here it is. This is Time Magazine. This is the front. And they said, is another ice age coming. This is 1974. This is making my case. Everybody believed it. And they talked about global warming before that and then another ice age, but we're all going to die one way or another. Now I put up the other chart, which is also Time Magazine. And this is when they said, oh, no, here's the last polar bear and all the ice is, so we have another global warming period. Both of them Time Magazine, both of them 30 years apart. This is what has been happening for a long period of time. So recognizing this, we had a little experience that, in getting back, and so I made a determination that I would not only support the Whitehouse Amendment, since it was just one sentence and it said that climate is changing and it's not a hoax, I could clarify that by becoming a co-sponsor to his amendment. So I did that on the floor just a few minutes ago. And I said on the floor that, yes, it is changing, no one questions about that. But the hoax is that there are people who are so arrogant that they think they have the power to change climate. Now, that's the hoax, and that is not the fact that that climate is changing. So that is what has been happening. And when some of the scientists came out and they started changing back and forth, and all of a sudden people realized this whole thing was cooked up by the United Nations, IPCC was part of that group, then they found out that some of the scientists that were behind this it was discovered that they had some emails that were sent out saying and proving conclusively that they were cooking the science, that these scientists were lying, that they were, and so one of the things that was discovered that came out was an email from one of these scientists to another, and that was 1999, and it read, and I'm quoting now, "I've just completed Mike's nature trick, adding in the real temperatures of each of the series for the last 20 years. In other words, they were cooking the science at that time. This thing was such a scandal that throughout the world, we didn't hear nearly as much in the United States, but we did throughout the world. The UK Telegraph, that's one of maybe the largest communication in the UK, they said it's the worst scientific scandal of our generation. What they're talking about, the scientific scandal, is that they're trying to make it sound like man is responsible for all these things. The Financial Times came out, they said the closed-mindedness of these supposed men of science is surprising even to me. The stink of intellectual corruption is overpowering. One of the IPCC physicists said that ClimateGate was a fraud on a scale I've never seen before. And this went on, and we could quote Newsweek, The Guardian, and all the rest of them. So it was known worldwide as a scandal. And what was a scandal? It was that they had a bunch of scientists that were saying we're going to have to pass something like cap and trade, and because man is causing the world to come to an end. So that was really what that was all about. Now we're going to have the debate, and we want to do that. I chair the committee called the Environment and Public Works Committee, and I chaired it 8 years ago. Then when the Democrats got control of the Senate, and now I'm back in that position. So we'll have a chance to have hearings. And Mr. President, we're going to have hearings with prominent scientists to come in and talk about this thing. Because all they say now is, oh, the science is settled, the science is settled. The science is not settled. And that's the reason my good friend Senator Wyden, I know, is wanting to make some remarks, but that's the reason that I made that statement today. And I think that we will have that very healthy debate, but let's keep in mind what the president was suggesting last night. It would cost the American people $479 billion a year, and that would constitute the largest tax increase in the history of America. And that's one of his legacies that he's trying, during the last part of his presidency, that he announced last night that he's going to put as a top priority. So we'll be there to be the truth squad in that, and we'll make sure that my kids and grandkids, and I've got 20 of those, are not going to be encumbered with the largest tax increase in the world, particularly when their own director said, if you pass it, it will not reduce CO2 emissions. And with that, I yield the floor.